Right? It's supposed What's up, everybody? This is your boy David Mitchell, aka Dirty Mitch, at Show Me State Goon on the X Files. Welcome this wonderful Saturday afternoon. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day and enjoying themselves and be safe. I have a special guest today. If you guys, if you've been living under a rock, you should know this is the only place to get your wrestling info. If you guys have been listening here, probably at least the last 6 months, you guys have heard them refer to Drake from LA. Drake is a young wrestling fan out in Los Angeles, California, and very passionate. And I have the luxury of having him on today. Drake, how are you doing today, young man?
I'm doing very well today, David. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a wonder to see young wrestling fans such as yourself, and not only fans, but that want to know about wrestling and not just ooh good and ooh bad. That are intrigued by the magic. As we've heard. You're out in LA. How's the weather out there today?
Today it's all right. I think it's a little gloomy, but yeah, I think there's a chance of rain, but usually, especially around this time, it's usually getting pretty good for the summer.
Yeah, I'm out here in Wichita, Kansas. It's out in the middle of the map, and I tell you what, we get the worst weather sometimes. And, at times you could have 100 degrees today, rain tomorrow, a tornado the third day, and snow on the end of the week, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's about 75 degrees out, 80 degrees outside right now. My wife's upstairs with our 2-year-old grandson, getting ready to put him in the swimming pool. But so Drake, you're 13 years old. How long have you been a wrestling fan?
Oh, so I've been a wrestling fan. The first event that I watched, the first wrestling show that I ever watched was WrestleMania 33. So it was in 2017. I was about 5 or 6 when that happened, and I was amazed. I loved it, and so I've been a fan ever since.
So that WrestleMania, what was your favorite match? What was the match that you watched since that was your first event? What was it that you watched about that it was like I'm hooked?
Man,
Was there a match in particular?
It was the ladder match, the tag team with the Hardys, and so I was sort of explained the lore behind the Hardys and their return, and then also the crazy match with Jeff Hardy hitting the Swantons. I was amazed, and that kept me. And I told the Hardys, I met the Hardys a couple weeks ago at TNA, and I told them about it. I told Jeff, so yeah, it was awesome.
Hey, and Jeff Hardy, forget all the nonsense, personal life stuff, right? Down to earth human being. I met him in 2012 here in Wichita at a TNA event. Bobby Roode was the world champion at the time, but talk about down to earth. Met him and AJ Styles.
Yeah.
Got both their autographs, just down to earth. Jeff, there was a for the adults that smoke cigarettes, they had a smoking area outside. Well, the door where the wrestlers would go outside from their area in the back was right there. He stood out there and talked with a bunch of us, he was just a regular person. That's a good match to get intrigued. And I'm glad you got explained the lore of the Hardys,
Yeah.
because I've watched them their whole career. Like I said, I'm 49. My very first wrestling match, and I don't remember much about the match because I was only 3. But my very first wrestling match was in 1979, and my grandpa took me to the Shrine Mosque Auditorium in Springfield, Missouri, where I'm from. And the main event was Harley Race versus and this is a cliche, very young Ric Flair, right?
Wow.
Before Ric Flair ever became world champion, what they did was they had him, the guys that they wanted to maybe put the belt on, they would go to the smaller towns, which would be house shows to us now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And see how they could work with the champion before they decided, okay, this is going to be our guy, right? That's how the national, you'd have to go. I'm going to give you an assignment later, being a young fan, but that's how the National Wrestling Alliance operated back then, right? So from there, you was hooked, right?
Yeah.
So who is actually, let's backtrack. So you were hooked after that ladder match. How much of a fandom did it become afterwards? Was it a slow burn, or was it like every Monday, Friday, anytime it was on TV? Was it immediate, or was it, a slow burn to your fandom?
It definitely wasn't like right away, because I also wasn't like, I didn't know that much. I watched a couple of the pay-per-views and probably a couple of Raws and SmackDowns after that. But I wasn't like every day, every week watching
You're just
until
like eating and sleeping wrestling.
no. So it was probably a few months after that, maybe sort of near SummerSlam or around that time during the summer, when I started to like really get hooked and really start loving it.
Where is a person your age, right? You have rules and restrictions with parents, so it's not like, hey, I can go flip on the TV whenever I want. So summertime, I can see where that could start to pick up. So where that was your first actually watching wrestling. What was the first time you ever went to a live event, whether it be a house show or a Raw, SmackDown, TNA?
I want to say it was Survivor Series 2017.
Wow.
Either that, there might have been a Raw a couple months before then at the Staples Center that I went to, but I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it was that Survivor Series in 2017.
Was that the return of Sting?
No, I'm pretty sure that was 2015.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember. Look, right about that time, like I consume wrestling, and so do my sons. But right about that time was when they started getting in high school, athletics, sports. So it's kind of like as much as my Generation X, about technology. That's the one thing I do like about technology now, because as a parent, when you're stretched thin, you got multiple kids and you have to be here, there, and there. It's easy to go look now, say at YouTube. Let me just scan my highlights. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. Going on. At those events, what was something that you took away from it that's like, wow, the magic is different live than it is on TV?
So I'm not gonna lie, it was not till like 2022, 2023 where I started like really feeling the magic of like live being there. But back like near my first ones, I really loved like the chants and like the "this is awesome."
Yeah.
My parents would when the "holy shit" chants.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I gotta say, 2023, We went to WrestleMania. My whole family, the four of us, went to WrestleMania,
I
and
was
yeah,
there.
Marcus
Yep.
in the
LA,
background.
SoFi Stadium, Inglewood, California.
Yeah. And that one was what really like got me hooked. Just everything about it. It was like truly like they say it's the grandest stage of them all. It was
And
like a
it truly
spectacle.
is.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people, you know, um, when it comes to going now, other pay-per-views or PLEs as they're called now, are I won't say different, but the experience is a little different. WrestleMania is it's an experience,
Yeah.
right? If you I put it like this, I had some friends say, "Well, that was a crappy view of the ring," and I said, I did not go for the view. If I was going for the
Yeah.
view, I would have stayed at home and watched it on TV. It's the experience. See, so
Mhm.
me, for instance, I know that was an easy go for you there at 2023. Okay, so I have a deal where I won't say baller on a budget, but I try to live within my means, right? I don't like for WrestleManias, I plan the whole year. I save a little bit, you know, out of each paycheck, put money back. But I drive, right? So I drove Dallas, Texas was about a 5 hour drive from here. But LA was my son and I made it to we our room was in Torrance. We made
Mhm.
it from Wichita to Torrance in 22 hours. But the
Wow.
experience, so the busted open party, see, that's a big thing. The
Yeah.
busted open party was at the Whiskey A Go Go,
Yep.
right? And I grew up in the 1980s, and a lot of the 80s quote unquote hair bands, right? That's where they got their start, their big break, right? At that Whiskey A Go Go. The very next year, my wife and I drove to Philadelphia, you
Mhm.
know, the ECW arena.
Yep.
And then this year we drove to Vegas. But the thing is I work so much, right? My wife works so much, so we use that time. It's kind of like a family vacation.
Yeah.
Driving gives you know the experience. Get to see historical stuff, you know, and things that you only see on TV or in books, right? Um, Certain stuff along like this last trip along historical Route 66, right?
Mhm.
But it was the experience, is I tell people, because the whole week that we were in Vegas, there's things going on. I know a group of people, matter of fact, and I have a picture of them that's in my intro signature. Um, that they go to WrestleMania, but you know what? They don't go to WrestleMania. That
Mm.
makes sense. They
Yeah.
go to the city and do all the independent stuff, right? As much as they can. And then they'll go to a watch party and watch WrestleMania,
Yeah.
you know. Definitely not spending what I spent this year.
Yeah.
Whoa. You know, that
That's
was
what there's like you mentioned, there's so much stuff nowadays. For now, it seems like all the PLEs. Now, for all when WWE has a big event in your town, then everybody's there. So,
yeah,
like Money in the Bank in LA, my family's going, and I'm just looking, and there's like a million different things to do, like
yeah.
with wrestling out there, like out here,
Well,
for
and
that
see,
weekend.
that's where I know as a young fan, it's hard for you to say differentiate. It's what they call the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community, right? You know, can be extremely toxic at times. Tribalism.
Yeah.
You got a group of fans on this hand that only like WWE and anything else is trash. Same with you got a group of fans like here that's AEW and anything
Yeah.
else, or and that's sad because whether they like it or not, the WWE is the top dog, right?
Yeah.
And the top dog attracts all the attention, right? So it helps. They don't. A lot of the fans don't realize a WrestleMania, not just the what. Okay, Las Vegas is going to generate money anyway.
Yeah.
LA is going to generate money anyway. I'll take, for instance, the type of revenue it would generate in a New Orleans, right? Which
Mhm.
is where it's at next year. But
Yeah.
not only that, the other smaller companies, independent wrestling companies, will put on shows because they know there's fans that will come to their event because they're in town for the other event, right? Case in point, like I gave that example. But well, let's move it along a little bit. So now that you're into your fandom, do you have do you got groups of friends that, hey, these are my wrestling buddies. We get together and watch PLEs, or we get together and, go to shows or talk wrestling. Do you have a group of friends like that as well?
I've got two people, and they don't know each other. I got two people that like wrestling, two of my friends.
Okay.
And yeah, they don't know each other. But yeah, so like I've got my action figures over here. One of them just loves the action figures and will watch the events. And then the other one likes watching the events. But yeah, it's not like a big group of
Yeah.
people. But
Well, yeah.
I like seeing watching on social media like other kids that like do wrestling content and like watching it and stuff. Like, cause that makes me happy that there's other people like me.
And that's cool, and that's good. And at your age, that will grow. That's something. I get the light bulb that pops off in my head all the time, or I'll look up at the sky at my grandpa in heaven. I'll be like, I get it now, right? There's certain things that you'll hear in life, be like, that you're told, and I'm sure you get told at times, you don't understand this now, but when you get older, it'll make more sense, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same way with growing fandom. It starts out with just one or two people, like Dave LaGreca. Like when he started Busted Open, he worked for Sirius XM. He had 1 hour, 1 day a week. That's how it Busted Open started. And look at it now. It's 7 days a week, over 8 hours of content a day, pushing for 24/7.
Yep.
I believe that when they get to 24/7, they will have their own channel, right? But I think if you look at it, and this is something with life experience, they're stockpiling a little bit, right? You had your normal core, is you got the fat head in the back, Bully, Tommy, Dave, and Mark, right? Now you've added, over the years, you got Thunder Rosa, you got Denise Salcedo, you got Justin LaBar, Jonathan Hood, Nick Nemeth, Bishop Dyer, Tom Pestock, as I knew him in the NFL, or Baron Corbin, Natty Neidhart, Matt Cardona.
Yep.
I feel that they're stockpiling these hosts for that move, right?
Yeah.
To have that move in place. And that we'll get into a little bit more about Busted Open in just a second. So now that you got your fandom going, who is your favorite wrestler, either at the moment or in your young life, that you feel like, that's my favorite of all time?
All right, so I got two guys. Right now, it's between Jey Uso and Roman Reigns.
There you go, Tribal Chief.
So right now they're probably tied. They're probably both. I've loved the Bloodline ever since it started. Yep. Obviously, I don't know if everybody heard my call on Friday. It was a pretty emotional call about
giving the flowers. I caught part of that.
Yeah, and so I've got my Roman Reigns blanket right here and another one right there. So
I seen that. I like your setup, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've loved Roman my whole life, so he's definitely my favorite all time.
Okay.
Right now it's Roman and Jey.
I totally agree, and can't go wrong there. Okay, for me, like I said, I was introduced to wrestling in 1979.
Yeah.
Growing up, I love Dusty Rhodes. I love Dusty Rhodes because my grandpa liked Dusty Rhodes, right? And that was a bonding thing with me and my grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but unfortunately, I got bullied a lot when I was a kid. I didn't have any brothers, only sisters. I was the oldest of four, and so it's hard in that era to find a way. So I became enamored with the heels because everybody that was bullying me, they liked, the Hulk Hogan's, the Dusty Rhodes. Okay, you guys like that? I'm going this way, right? So I became enamored with the heels because it was like, everybody's cheering him, but he's still got the belt, right? I watched Ric Flair Ric Flair is one of my favorite of all time, right? As well as Dusty Rhodes. Steve Austin, obviously, right?
Yeah.
After Stone Cold, had forced to retire because of the injuries, I became it was weird because the lifestyle, straight edge lifestyle, I was never like that, but I loved CM Punk, right? And I'm still a CM Punk guy. And Roman Reigns, because if you go look in my closet, if I had to make a video and show it, send it to you sometime. I have, well, let's just guess, 40 shirts hanging in my closet. Of the 40, 35 are wrestling shirts.
Same.
Of the 35, 20 of them are Bloodline shirts.
Yeah.
Right. And but I also like Cody. I like Cody because he's an extension of Dusty. And when I peel the layers back of the Cody character and the Dusty of the blue collar, type thing, right? I look at myself and that's what I am. I'm a blue collar worker. I fabricate sheet metal for a living. I work 28 days a month, right? I have calluses, but I punch that time clock, right? I'm the common man. So my daughter loves Cody, by the way. So that made it, she's 24 now. So, but when Cody came back, I was so entrenched in the Bloodline story that I just couldn't say, well, Cody's back, I'm with Cody. No, I was in LA, even though part of me wanted to see Cody win. I was all Bloodline, right? And the cool thing about, I don't know, what section were you sitting in? What level were you sitting in SoFi?
Okay, so I'm gonna say so you got the camera and it's facing that way. So I was on the side with the camera, the hard cam, and I was a little bit to the left. So
night 2, I was on the third concourse, but above the stage, right? Like we had to watch the screen to see, but it was right there. Our row was right there at the top of the concourse, and that was the exit concourse, right?
Yeah.
And this, this was what was crazy because the crowd wanted Cody. Not the section I was in. It was like I was in the Samoan, Tongan, and Pacific Islander section because everybody was pro Bloodline in my section.
Yeah.
Right. To the point where, I was meeting people that were from all over California, and it was like, hey, I drove 5 hours just to see Oos do it. So it was back to the experience.
Yeah.
But I couldn't turn that off. And even though, which also made for some good radio with Dave the next day, you want to hear a classic Dave LaGreca meltdown, you go listen to the day after WrestleMania episode 2023. Oh my God. That made the drive home back to Kansas that much more, entertaining.
Yeah.
But I couldn't turn that off. And even with like I was telling my wife, this was crazy. Night 1 this year in Vegas. She's like, I bet you're confused. I said, kind of, because you got this main event.
Yeah.
And I like and I like Seth Rollins because I like the work. I like the work ethic and even the believability, whether it's a shoot or a work of the beef with him and CM Punk. And let's just say for the surface it is. They show the other side, what professionalism. Hey, I might not like you, and I got people at work that I work with that I can't stand. But when we hit that time clock, right, we're a team, right? Yeah. And I like that professionalism between CM Punk and Seth Rollins. But yeah, those are my guys. Tag team wise, okay. Now let me say this before I ask your favorite tag team. You can't say the Dudleys because that is a you know, even though we love Uncle Bully and Uncle Devon, and they are the, we'll get into that in a moment, but let's take them out of the equation. Not answering the Dudleys. Who's your favorite tag team?
So you got Yeet and No Yeet.
No Yeet.
So of all time, 100% the Usos.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're not a tag team right now. Jay's the World Heavyweight Champ. Right now, it's easy for Axiom. Like, they're by far, they've been my favorite tag team for like a year now. Every time I watch them, it makes me want to get in there and wrestle. And because like what they do, it's insane. Like, it's off the charts.
Yeah, hey, and that's what I like. With you being a young fan, is you're recognizing the up and coming talent. You're young enough to be like, I'm going to latch onto them. I grew up in an era with a lot of tag teams and a lot of historic tag teams like the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, the Hart Foundation, to name a few. And to see you at a young age to gravitate to a tag team that's on their way up, that's awesome. As an adult wrestling fan, to see the next generation, it's kind of like, you see things be like, oh man, the next generation is gonna. You give the next generation hope and promise that as a wrestling fan, we're gonna be left in good hands. Okay, well, let's move right along here. Let me grab my list here. Now, I usually have a list, so I had a list compiled because I have a couple ECW legends lined up for a future show. But with the unfortunate and untimely death of Sabu, we've tabled some of those interviews for later on. But I do have, let's see. Okay. What's your favorite wrestling match of all time that you've watched, whether it be in real time or something that you've been caught on YouTube or on the network and been like, wow, your favorite match of all time?
So, all right, I've got two. One, I just want to give an honorable mention because it's probably recency bias that's got me. But that women's triple threat match from WrestleMania was really like one of the best matches I've ever seen.
My wife, not to cut you off, that was her highlight of the night for her.
Yeah, that was awesome. But okay, my favorite. Oh man, my favorite match of all time. Okay. All right. I'll say for now, and I might over the course of the interview think of a different one. But it's either Roman versus Cody, WrestleMania in Philly. I didn't like the outcome, but I can't lie, it was one of the greatest matches. And then one that I've seen live is Sammy and Kevin Owens against the Usos in the main event at WrestleMania. That was an awesome match. I felt like Paul Bear in Texas.
That crowd was so electric that I'll put it like this. If there was things that, heavy stuff that wasn't bolted down, that crowd, there was the intensity. When that referee hit the the mat for the third time, oh my goodness. Yeah. I can only imagine, you hear the stories about the pop that Triple H got when he returned from his first quad injury, the return to Madison Square Garden. You hear about that pop. You hear about the world famous Road Warrior pop.
Yeah.
To me, that was I don't know. To me, that was a tie because I was in the year before in Dallas. And when Austin's music hit, that was. So for me, and my fandom spans, 46 years. So there's a lot of matches.
Yeah.
But for me, and I'll just go recent memory. When I mean recent, I'll go last 25 years. And it has to be, it's a tie. it's from the same one of them. I'll just give the Roman Cody at 41. It wasn't the outcome I wanted, but to build up the story,
Yeah.
the electricity, everything lined up, right? And to
Yeah.
be there in person and to feel the magic, right?
Mhm.
You know, goosebumps. But the other one, Die Hard, without a doubt, WrestleMania 38, Dallas, Texas, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
I've been a Steve Austin fan since he was Stunning Steve Austin. Loved the cockiness, the brash. It was a little rough going with the ringmaster gimmick, you know, but then once the Stone Cold gimmick, I've been stuck ever since. And I have a saying, and my wife of over 25 years, when in doubt, Stone Cold wins out, right? Meaning, what should I get him for his birthday? What should I get him for Father's Day, anniversary? You ever got a doubt? Anything with Steve Austin. I mean, it could be an action figure. It could be a cigarette lighter, an ashtray, a coffee cup, socks, boxer. You know, if his image is on it, I'll take it, right?
Yeah.
And to be in there, to watch, you know, albeit it was the squash match that it was or whatever, but just the build up. And,
Yeah.
you know, like I said, I told my wife, and to have real quickly off tilter, who's your football team?
Rams.
Okay. I followed the Rams when they were in St. Louis, but okay. So that would be like you going to SoFi and watching the Rams win the NFC Championship to go to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Super Bowl being right at SoFi and you going to see that and then them winning.
Yeah.
Right? So I double dip. I'm a Cowboys fan. So to watch my all-time favorite wrestler have his swan song in his basically hometown, kind of, so to speak, at AT&T Stadium, it was like bucket check. And then, you know, if it was on the phone, it was going to ding, 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 ding. But the thing was, the fan, you know, I didn't look at myself as 46, 40, you know, however old I was a couple years ago. I looked at myself as the kid. And that's what I like in you. I hear that in your voice. You know, not just me, there's thousands of Busted Open Nation members that love your passion, that share tweets and love your take. And, you know, like I said, you're a bright spot for the, you know, the wrestling community, that for every toxic thing, there's bright spots such as yourself. And don't ever take this advice. Don't ever let nobody kill your passion, right? You get, just like Razor Ramon, Scott Hall said, you know, get a dream, follow it. Dreams, you know, do come true, but it comes true with hard work, right? Listen to your parents.
Definitely.
Pay attention in school. Always take advice from people. Listen to the advice. You don't have to follow the advice, but there's things that I was taught in school that probably didn't register then, that I look back in life now, and it's like I said, that light bulb. Oh, okay, I get it. Always be open to people's advice in life, young man. Okay, so I want to ask, go ahead.
Okay, real quick, if I could grab something with what you're saying with Austin, a thought popped into my head.
Go ahead.
If I can find it here. Here it is. So you said, when in doubt, Stone Cold. That's pretty much me with Roman Reigns, to the point where one of my friends didn't know what to get me, but he knew I liked Roman Reigns. He knew I love Roman Reigns. So he literally got me this shirt.
Oh, that's awesome.
With Roman Reigns on it.
That is awesome.
And it's like, that's like one of the best things I could ask for, because it's not like one of Roman's like acknowledge me or anything.
Yeah.
It literally is just a picture showing
that
I love Roman.
You know, and something like that, you know, I always embrace all gifts, right? But when people go above and beyond, right? You know,
Yeah.
Because that's like a custom made, right? He had
Yeah.
that printed off for you. He took the time and the effort, and that's something else. Appreciate when you get older. Sometimes it's not about the dollar value; it's the time and the effort and the meaning
Yeah.
behind the gift, and that's pretty awesome. Real quickly, so we're talking about Austin, right quick, right? Now I'm showing you this just out of I collect these. Let's see if I can get one that's loose. I have some that's up here. I can't get them off. Well, so he has this Broken Skull beer, right?
Yeah.
Well, in the Midwest, the distributors don't carry it. I can order it, or I could drive 3 hours up to Kansas City, Missouri and get some, right? But on my, part of my Austin fandom is I bought, let's see, what is it I got? Now, the American lager I did drink because it tastes like Budweiser, but I'm not an IPA guy. So, but I bought a 6-pack of the Broken Skull IPA and a 6-pack of the 316 IPA just to have the cans. Now, is that not fandom? Right? Like I
Yeah.
bought it just for the can. Now the American lager I did drink because I had to do the taste test, right? And it was like I said, tasted like a Budweiser. So I was happy with that. I tried that IPA. I was like, no, can't do it. I'll leave the cans. I gave my son, he was like, well, I drink IPA stuff. I'm like, I don't see how you guys can do that. So real quickly, let's move on to Busted Open. So
Okay.
how and when did you discover Busted Open Radio?
So I discovered it. It was on the drive to night one, WrestleMania 39. Uh, and I think the WrestleMania party was going on, and
Mhm.
I was like, wow. So this is just they just talk about wrestling, and my dad was like, yeah, I think so. They just talk wrestling, and so ever since I didn't start calling in until earlier this year because it was really because I don't have a bunch of friends that love wrestling. So I
Mhm.
was like, I want to talk to more people about wrestling. And so I was like a little like afraid to ask my parents like, can I call in on the radio? But then I did, and my dad was like, yeah, you should do that. You should do it. And I was like, wait, so that was all it took? I thought it was gonna be like a long discussion on like what I need to do and how like I need to act and stuff
Yeah.
on the radio. But yeah, it was really quick. But I've been listening to Busted Open for a while in the car on the way to school.
Okay. So let me ask this. Do you because there was a time I was enamored with talk radio. Growing up, my grandfather, my dad's dad, who was a World War II veteran, he watched a little TV, but he was more into listening to talk radio, right?
Yeah.
News and stuff, right? So I became enamored with that. And there's a few things like Stephen A. Smith used to do a call-in show, right? And I remember one time getting through to Stephen A. Smith, Dan Patrick, ESPN. I've gotten through to him a few times. It's an art.
Yeah.
And I remember the calls. Do you remember your very first call? Do you remember what that was about, the topic,
I
and what
do.
and who it was and who it was to?
So it was Uncle Bully and Uncle Tommy. It was
Okay.
on a
The
Monday.
Fat and the Furious.
Yeah, the Fat and the Furious. LaGreca was not there. Um, I forget why, but yeah, Dave was not there, and they were talking LFG. It was after the first episode of LFG, so I was like, you know what? I had the day off from school, so me
Mhm.
and my dad were like planned. I was like, he goes to work early, but then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get up 6 a.m. I'm gonna call in. I don't have school, so even if they don't take it till the final hour, I won't be at school. But yeah, and then it went great. I talked about LFG, and yeah, it was like ever since then, I was like, wow, I want to do this more. Just
What
talking to people.
what did they think? What did Tommy and Bully think when they realized that you were a teenager, an adolescent, a
So,
child?
so first off, real quick, I want to go start from the very beginning with the producer. I think it was Andre was
Might
the
have been.
producer
Yeah.
when I called in, and I was like, "Hi, my name's Drake from LA," and Andre was like, kid, how old are you?" And then I'm like, "I'm 13," but I gave this whole spiel about how I'm very well, like I act really well. I know a lot about wrestling. I'm really passionate,
And
and so he was like,
radio etiquette, right?
yeah, yeah. And so he was like, "Okay, I'll put you on hold for LFG." And then when I got on with Bully and Tommy, uh, they were like, Bully was like, "Uncle Bully." Sorry, I've gotten roasted a couple times on Busted Open for not calling him Uncle Bully. In my lesson, but yeah, Uncle Bully, he's like, "We've got a 13-year-old on the line, Drake in LA, and he wants to talk about LFG." So I think it went really well, and I was like so excited about that night I went and called in on After Dark to talk to Tommy, and Tommy loved it. He was like, "Were you that intelligent child that called in this morning?" I was like, "Yep, that was me." And so yeah, it was just great ever since then.
That's awesome. So what about your first interaction with Dave, with LaGreca?
So yeah, so my first call with Dave was I want to say it was the Thursday that week. It was Dave and either Jonathan, it was either Hood or LeVar. I want to say it was Jonathan Hood and LaGreca on a Thursday. And I called in. I forget what I talked about. It was probably like something about Dynamite from the night before.
Yeah.
But
If it was a Thursday, then
yeah,
it probably had to do with Dynamite.
yeah. So I'm pretty sure it was that. And Dave, they loved it. And me and my parents have a screen recording of, they went for like 6 or 7 minutes talking about me and my call after. Like, they were like, "Oh, do you think Drake was watching Busted Open right when he was born?" And so yeah, it was awesome. And yeah, it was pretty much, that was my first. I really loved that one because it was the first one with Dave. But yeah, it was awesome.
Dave's such an awesome guy. Dave and I, we all share the passion for professional wrestling, but we also share a passion for animals. And his wife Violetta does like a animal rescue, and we also, 80s Georgia Championship Wrestling area, the 605 time slot that famous, you hear the stories about.
Yeah.
And I actually gifted Dave a belt from my collection. His favorite belt of all time was the Georgia Championship Wrestling TV title, and I happened to have that. And
Wow.
it was, it's kind of odd because how they're going to start doing that segment, giving people their flowers, right?
Yeah.
While they're still here. Okay. I distinctly remember it was talking, somebody, I believe, had just passed away, not a wrestler, but it was the conversation was him and Tommy, and it was, well, when I die, I'm going to leave this and I'm taking this. I'm not leaving nobody nothing, kind of like wills and assets.
Yeah.
And so I called in and jokingly said, "Well, Dave, when I die, I'll leave you my Georgia Championship Wrestling TV title." And he goes, "Well, why wait till you die?" And I said, "Okay, just on a hum. One thing, here's a life lesson. The answer will always be no if you never ask." Right? So I messaged his wife. I said, have Dave call me. Dave called me. Then he sent me his address. And this has been going on 5 years now. Sent me his address. And ever since then, we chat on the phone periodically from time to time, send, pet pictures, birthdays, Christmas cards, anniversaries, stuff like that. Busted Open is not just a radio, show. It really is a family atmosphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, let me turn my camera a little bit. Okay. Well, the glare on the light here. I'll do it like this. I'll unhook it
Yeah.
and just walk backwards, right? Because I do have some cool pictures that I hadn't showed you yet. Okay, so I got, of course, Eureka Fathead, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I made a picture collage. Now I have another one, but like I said, some of these have kind of how I had them tacked on the wall. But
That's cool.
pictures from over the years from the Busted Open party, WrestleMania
That's
party.
really cool.
And I told Dave this, and I told my wife personally. I even told my son in LA when we were leaving the Whiskey at Go-Go on our way to SoFi. And I said, if there was an, knock on wood that there's not. I said, if there was an earthquake right now and WrestleMania was canceled and we had to go back home, I said the trip would have been well worth it. Very next year, ECW Arena. I am enamored. This is the ECW wall. It's not, like I said, it's under construction.
Yeah.
Got Uncle Bully, Uncle Devon. Pictures. Like I said, all the dolls. I've got God Rest His Soul.
Yeah.
We got Sabu right here. Very, very rare. Rare is in because there wasn't that many of them. New Jack, right? New Jack was one of my favorite. Then classic Uncle Bully, and I think you have this one.
Yeah.
This one right here.
I've got the updated version, the Mattel Elite version.
Does yours have,
Uncle
okay,
Bully.
so mine was the ECW version, and the model of the doll. So you see the red little lever on the back, and when you do it, their hands. Because I have from the same series, I have the Tommy, right?
Oh.
And then let's see who got Uncle Devon, but he's in the back, and I don't want to disturb all those. Let's see, Just Incredible, right?
Oh.
I have like 4 or 5 of these different Rob Van Dam ones.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yeah, I have a Mattel. I have an Elite Rob Van Dam. And I'm looking for a Mark Henry actually right now. But yeah.
Yeah, I won't say the Mark Henrys are rare.
Yeah.
But they are difficult to find because when they reproduce even the old school ones, that he tends to get overlooked at times. Here's an interesting one. Remember we was talking about Jeff Hardy and you meeting the Hardys, and I was telling you about meeting AJ Styles. Okay, so these were the TNA action figures, right? They didn't move very well.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so when we went to this TNA event, Uncle Bully was there. So they had different meet and greet type packages. You could buy an all out VIP and you got access to everything. Then they had at one intermission, all you had to do was buy the set. They were selling, it was TNA Cross the Line. It was Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles, right? If you bought that, you could get into the intermission meet and greet, backstage with Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles. Well, I had the TNA action figure. And the crazy thing is if I could ever meet AJ again, I would bring this because his comment, he autographed the back of it, right?
Wow.
He tried to, but he looks over at Jeff. He said, well, this is going to be a pretty difficult sign here. And I've got pictures of it to prove that him signing it. Here's an interesting piece. Jerry the King Lawler.
Wow.
Right. One thing I would strongly suggest to you, as a young wrestling fan, is when you see advertisements for appearances, whether it just be, I'll just throw a name out there. Dominic Mysterio is appearing at,
Cricket Wireless.
Cricket Wireless, from 2 to 4.
Yeah.
If you have the opportunity as a young fan, take advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how like some of the stuff you see that I've showed you. Like I went to a hockey game here in Wichita. Their minor league hockey. I went one night because Jerry the King. That's how I met Jerry Lawler. went to an independent baseball game one time because Ron Simmons was there.
Oh.
So, you see what I mean? So as a fan,
Yeah.
As a young fan, you have to do it with your parents,
Mhm.
But speaking of, are your parents wrestling fans?
So yeah, my dad's been a wrestling fan for years, like since he was a little kid. So is my brother. My mom will watch the events. She doesn't know as much, but oops, the glasses fell. But yeah, she'll watch the events with us, and she's like really gotten into it a little more recently. But yeah, so my whole family likes it.
That's cool. That's cool. So mine too. Mine too. Um, the crazy thing is my wife and I have been married 25 and a half years.
Hmm.
And it was wrestling that brought us together, kind of, when we first met. Well, we met, and then I asked her for something, and she said, "Well, let me get it from my dad." And when she went in she invited me in their house, and so I was standing there in the doorway, and they're watching wrestling on TV. So I'm like, "Oh wow!" And then boom, 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 and then her dad was from Midland, Texas, which isn't far from Silsbee, Texas,
Hmm.
Mark Henry country, and he said, "You're a wrestling fan?" I said, "Yep." He said, "Who's your favorite?" I said, "Stone Cold." He said, "Have a seat." Ever since, boom. And my wife, let's see, she went to WrestleMania 38. So New Orleans, I'm planning on going to New Orleans. New Orleans will be my fifth in a row. So of the four in a row that I've been to, the only one she missed was LA
Hmm.
because she had a surgery a couple weeks before and wasn't unable to travel. I mean, she was fine, but she couldn't travel. She had stitches in her stomach. So, but she is a fan. My kids are fans. Like my youngest son, he went to Vegas with us. He's John Cena. That's all he's known, right? And
Yeah.
he's 22. So when the Cena heel turn came, he was. I'm still rocking with John.
Yep.
And then my oldest son, diehard Rey Mysterio fan. My daughter, she loves Mark Henry and Cody Rhodes, right?
Okay.
So we're, a wrestling family. We
Yeah.
did things around wrestling. Wrestling come to town, we would all go. None of them were like, I don't want to go. Now, as they did get older, it's like, oh, okay, hey, I'm cool. You guys can go. So, but it's still me. So, but let me real quick about Busted Open. So how does that work with you? That because with me being in the Midwest, I'm 2 hours ahead of you. So right now it is what 2:30 in LA, right?
Yeah.
Well, right now it is 4:30 in Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah.
So it is 5:30 in New York. So what is that? What I mean is, how does that work for you? I mean, does it when you want to call in, when you tell your mom or your dad, hey, I want to call in to Busted Open in the morning, right? And but you got school.
Yeah.
So the show for me starts at 8 a.m. So it's 6 a.m. for you. Is that normal time? Is that when Busted Open starts, is that the time Drake's alarm goes off and he's up getting ready for school? Or is it,
So
if I'm going to call in, I know I got to get up at 6 to get ready for school?
so it's usually last year and like most of the time it was like 7:15 wake up, school starts at 8:15, get ready, everything, then go to school. Now it's since Busted Open starts at 6 and usually every day whether I want to call in or not, I'll wake up 5:40, 5:45, and which is very early compared to what I used to do. But yeah, I'll wake up, I'll shower, get breakfast, everything, get ready for school, and that usually gets me about up to 6 o'clock where I'll listen, and then if I call in, it's usually just the same. I'll when the show starts or a couple minutes in, a few minutes in, I'll call in, say what I want to talk about, and then if the 8:15 is when my school starts, so if I get to school, if I'm like, I've got busted open and I'm in the car, if I get to school, then I'll be like, okay, looks like I gotta go. And usually around that time, one of the producers will be like, Drake, you still there? Do you have school? And then, so I'll usually be like, yeah, I gotta hang up. I gotta go to school now. So it's sometimes if I don't call in, then I'll just listen on the way to school. But if I do call in, then usually they'll get to my call before school. But if not, I'll just hang up and
And that, like I said, when I'm talking about the family atmosphere, that's the awesome behind the scenes, the Andres, the Pauls,
yeah,
they know that your passion for busted open and wrestling, and they know that you got school, that
yeah.
they're willing to, hey, we need Drake wants to get on, bam, and certain things. Well, let me ask this: do you have any teachers at school that are wrestling fans?
Um, so I'm sure if I don't have any teachers like right now, that like teach me right now that like wrestling. I'm sure if like I did like a search of the school on all the teachers,
Mm-hmm.
there's probably a couple that like wrestling, but no, not right now. I actually so last year my Spanish teacher's husband
Uh-huh.
loved wrestling, loved Roman. So whenever there would be like a school event, I would talk to him, and so that would be good. But not really anymore. There's not any teachers that like wrestling.
Yeah. Well, and it can be understandable. It comes and goes. I have coworkers that worked at Love Wrestling, right? And some of it, that wrestling was how we bonded, and got closer at work. And like I said, that's the beauty you'll notice over life. Wow, I didn't know you was a wrestling fan. I case in point, I'll give you when it says never judge a book by its cover. I have a guy at work that has like all these biker tattoos, right? And he's an older guy. And you look at him, you'd be like, yeah, he's probably a, Leonard Skinner, heavy metal guy, right? Last year, my wife and I were in an Ice Cube concert right here in Wichita. As
Mhm.
I came through we got in the door, got our drinks, was getting ready to get to our seats. As I came through the curtain on the concourse, I looked and I seen this guy, his name is Jerry. I seen Jerry and I'm like, what? I looked at him and, talked to him. And then I told him the next day at work, I said, you were the last person I thought I would ever see there. And,
Yeah.
we bonded, it's something to bond with. And that's the beauty of wrestling.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to move right along a little bit. Let me ask this. With it coming to school, have you ever been tempted to be like, you're on hold and got to get into school? And you know what? I'm on hold here. Have you ever been tempted to do that? I'm just curious. I don't want to get you in trouble. So have you ever been, had your fun and be like, you know what, I'm taking this call while I'm in school?
So, so there was one time a couple weeks ago where I was really like I felt like I had such a good topic and I was like really gonna have a great call. Um and I didn't end up getting on, and it was like literally right up to the bell. I told my mom, I was like, pull over, and at 8:14 you can pull in, but we got to get as much time in case I get on. And
That's passion.
so I didn't end up getting on, but my mom was like, "Come on, Drake, you gotta go to school now." And so yeah, so I didn't
well,
end up getting on, but
that's pretty cool. I tell you, one time, that's the art and unfortunate thing about when you call into national radio,
yeah.
talk radio, is the wait, right?
Mhm.
And the hope of, like, the topic of what you're wanting to say, nobody beats you to that, or even the host beats you to that.
Yeah.
This was right hand, swear to God. And Paul Ehrlich is my witness. I was on hold. It was just after the Rumble. And it was talks about John Cena. This was before Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
And I was the thing about Joe Hendry. I'm like, Joe Hendry. And then I was sitting there thinking about, nobody said it had to be a WWE world title for it to be number 17. And I was thinking along the lines, my topic would have been John building up the younger talent and putting them over on the bigger stage, right?
Yeah.
Checks all that boxes. I mean, could you think of the ratings if John Cena's music would have hit on the Impact Zone
Yeah.
or the Bound for Glory?
Yep.
You know, the pop for Joe Hendry at Allegiant Stadium. I don't know how it came out over the TV, but it was enormous.
Yeah.
It was. I will say this, not to get off kilter about that, but you talk about loud pops at WrestleMania. In my opinion, Dominic Mysterio had the loudest pop live in person.
Really?
In person. Dominic's pop when he won the title.
Yeah.
It was like 5 minutes ago we were booing this guy, right?
Nobody let him talk.
Not even a week ago, this guy couldn't even get a word out on the mic, and now, but the thing, I don't even know, lost what I was saying before that about the pop.
Being on hold. John Cena,
so anyway, and just like you been on hold for a while, the producers will check back. Hey, we want to check you're still there. That we're getting ready to take calls.
Yeah.
Did that. And then Bully, your Uncle Bully. Now he's at my age level, so I can say Bully. Bubba, right? Blurts out the freaking idea. Joe, oh my God. And I'm like, no. And then I thought, wait a minute. Because I'm, before they went to another break.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, if they get to my call, Paul comes back on and he says, you still there? And I said, yeah, I'm still there. I said, but you're my witness. That was what I was saying when because they got me within, answered the call when I called in, the ring within the first couple minutes. So I mentioned that long before that topic came up, right? And he's like, well, I doubt that. And I said, no, I'm going to call you out. You're my witness, right? And he said, all right. And the unfortunate thing is they never got to my call. And that's the unfortunate thing, but that's the art of it. They're not going to get to every,
Yeah.
But I will say this, when you said that about you not referring to him, his Uncle Bully and his bullying him, raking you through the coals, I can say this. There's been more than a few times I've called in with a crappy opinion, right? And he'll let me know, hey, really what it is. But the thing about me is I don't run, you've seen, that's the toxic thing about the internet is there was maybe about a year ago, if that, a caller, Bully told him what he thought of his opinion. So my feelings are hurt. It might have been Bully and Dave.
Yeah. I remember that.
And then it's like, hold up. They even let the guy call back.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like I commented, there's been many times where Bully's like, you know what, that's crap. And I'm just going to let you know. Or he's made a comment. My comment might have been off kilter. He'd be like, you waited on hold for 2 hours and that's what you could come up with. I love his honesty. That's the one thing. He doesn't cater, the feelings. No, I would much rather you be honest and, than sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
That's what I love about Bully. Mm-hmm. Tommy, I love about his passion just about people, right? Mm-hmm. Tommy is always, no matter what, Tommy's always willing to and will find the good in everybody.
Yep.
Mark is just Uncle Mark, down home, down to earth, just like somebody, that could live next door to you is your neighbor. And then, Dave is Dave. Dave is just like anybody else, a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
That just happened to get a radio show, and I love that dude to death, right? Well, real quickly before we go, we mentioned John Cena. Yeah. We mentioned the current thing. we're going to do this little thing called If You Had the Pencil. So, Drake, in LA, if you had, now I'll give my take after you, but if you had the pencil, how would you write out the rest of John Cena's run from now until December?
Okay, so like all the matches that I think
No,
he
you
had,
don't
or-
really have to do all the matches, but
Yeah.
just a gloss over. This is May, so we got June, July, August, September, October, November, December.
Yeah.
Between
Okay.
now and December, what kind of stories would you put him in with, and against who, and who's the final match?
So I think you, as much as I don't like this and I don't want him to come back, I think it would be really cool to do like a tag match with maybe Cena and Travis Scott against Cody and Bad Bunny. Because, and
That's a good
Cody's
one.
mentioned it before, his mom, I think, is Puerto Rican and Bad
Yep.
Bunny's Puerto Rican, so there's something there with that. Maybe like a different gear from Cody or something. But I think that could be really cool, even though I hate Travis Scott to death and that song Fiend. Oh man, yeah, whatever. So I think you also need to have something with Roman and CM Punk. I
There you
think
go.
because CM Punk, maybe that happens at Money in the Bank, the 14 years in the making thing. And so I've got 3 more things after that. So
Okay.
obviously, and I'll make them quick.
So no, go ahead, take your time.
Okay,
So we're
so
at Money in the Bank, CM Punk.
Money in the Bank, CM Punk, 14 years in the making. This time Cena's trying to take the title away. That would be awesome, I think. Next, I want to say SummerSlam, or maybe even something after that, Roman Reigns. Because Cena said in multiple interviews that for his GOAT for WWE is Roman. And so I think that could be great storytelling, especially with how the Bloodline story, you can see Roman's one of the best storytellers that they've got. So I think that could be awesome. Next, so these are sort of going to be like hometown, trying to get as much heat on Cena as possible. There's 2 shows in Montreal coming up this summer. So you can do Sami Zayn. I think that would be awesome. They had their match in 2015, I want to say, and it was awesome. Sammy's first time on the main roster. I think that could be just awesome having in Montreal.
And Screwjob.
Yeah.
I want to ruin that. And you do it in Montreal.
Man, that I didn't even think about that part.
I didn't until you just mentioned the dates in Montreal, and I'm like, the whole story mantra with him right now is ruined wrestling. And what was I don't know. It depends on who you are, but Montreal Screwjob wasn't in a good light for certain people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that would be awesome. Okay, go ahead.
So next, I think this is gonna be one of the last 2. Survivor Series is in San Diego, and there was a little thing. I don't know all the details, but it was 14 years ago, 2011. Had the thing with Rey Mysterio and John Cena with the title. Survivor Series is in San Diego this year. Imagine going all the way back. One of Cena's last dates, the ultimate babyface, never heel, Rey Mysterio, and against the ultimate heel Cena, the never heel Mysterio. I think that could be awesome in Mysterio's hometown. And ending it off, this has been a rough one for me, deciding ending between Cody and Orton. I really want to say Orton because that's been like his whole career has been Cena and Orton. If he was still there, it would be Edge. Easy.
Yeah.
Cena's last match for me, it would be Edge if he was still in WWE.
That would be
good. I think, and Uncle Bully and Dave have said it too, I think it's going to be Cody. Ah, man. But then the one thing I'll say about Cody is they didn't like him in Las Vegas at WrestleMania.
No.
Why would they like him in Cena's hometown, like in Boston, in his last match? I think you would need it to be a heel.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Is that where we get the final? Where if that is it, if they go with what you got, is that where we get the full Cody heel turn?
So
And what,
okay,
kind of like a double switch. You know what I mean? Like Cena
yeah,
walks in the heel, even though we're in Boston, but he walks out the face, and vice versa with Cody,
yeah.
right?
So I want to say no. I don't want Cody to turn heel for a long time. I
Mhm.
think that role could be great for two of my favorite heel characters of all time. Like I think two of the greatest heel characters is like that like 2021, 2022 tribal chief Roman could play a great role with
Yeah,
that, or like the 2009 Randy Orton type of guy. Like either Randy or Roman in that spot, I think could be great. And even if Cena's not like, yay, super babyface, like the fans will love him no matter
they
what.
they will, because, and I will say this, evidence was shown on TV right after Backlash.
Yeah, I've
He
seen
came
that.
back out when they stopped, and he said, "Cut the music," and he did his promo and walked back up. It did it
Yeah.
not, like I called in and said, it looked like he had buyer's remorse, because he's looking at the title and the entire crowd was chanting "Thank you,
Thank
Cena."
you.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And in Vegas, the live crowd. I don't know how much of the because I have yet to go back and watch that match, but I know from the time we left our seats to the crowd was still chanting "Thank you, Cena," all the
Mhm.
way out of the parking area to where the pedestrian traffic. That's all you heard was "Thank you, Cena." Right.
Mhm.
So I think so. You have him going out now. Let me ask this then: do you have him losing his last match, or does he walk out the door the champion?
Yeah, I think it definitely depends who he faces. I
Okay.
think he should win. How?
You think he should walk out WWE undisputed
Oh
champion?
no, 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 not at all, not
That's
at
what I
all.
mean. Do you think he should lose his last match, or last match he wins and he leaves officially leaving as the champion?
No, I think then if it's for the title, then yeah, he loses his last match.
Okay.
But then I think that might fit a better role for Cody or someone that could use a title win. I think if Cena drops the title like right after Survivor Series leading up to his last match, I think that could be good because if Cena's in my eyes, if Cena's gonna take the title, which I don't want. I don't want him to leave with the title. I would rather him lose before his last match because if his last match is going to be for the title, I would want it to be about the retirement of Cena and it being all like,
Not about the title.
yeah.
You want
And
it to
this is
be
what,
about the send off and not
yeah.
the championship.
Yeah, and I want to go back to uh Dave LaGreca real quick with the Cody Crybaby, like the "We Want Cody" movement, and that was obviously originally going to be Roman versus The Rock, and I didn't love that because when Roman faces The Rock, if it ever happens, I want it to be about that Ulafala, not about the undisputed title. I think it should be all about the Ulafala, and this is the
Yeah.
same thing with Cena. It should be all about his retirement.
Because and you know why and I'm glad you bring up those scenarios,
Yeah.
because it almost when okay, look, if Cena still has the championship at his last match, right, then
Yeah.
it's obvious, history wise, that he's going to lose,
Yeah.
right? If it would have been Rock and Roman in Philly, knowing the Rock's Hollywood schedule,
Yeah.
then it was almost
Rock
like
and
a
win.
given that Roman was going to win, right?
Yeah.
So you take away that element of surprise. So I
Mhm.
like that in your theory and your thought process. Okay, so here's mine. You had almost everybody in line that I mentioned, that you mentioned.
Yeah.
See, so from here on out, from May to December, major ones. See him, because I look at who's been around Cena's run, who's still in ring shape, and who also it would make sense. And obviously, We've already checked off the box of Randy Orton. We have to run it back with Cody at some point.
Yeah.
Because Cody's got to get his WrestleMania rematch. CM Punk, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Tribal Chief, right? And here's my interesting take.
Let's hear it.
Just because I know about some of the history with Royal Rumble is in Saudi Arabia next year.
It is.
Right? The one thing the Saudis sports group that when they first started these super shows in Saudi Arabia and Dubai was they wanted a legit title change on their show, right? Not a crown jewel title created, not a greatest Royal Rumble championship title created. They wanted, to say, hey, this happened at ours. Nothing's ever really come to fruition. What if, this is just a what if, his last match is against The Rock? Because, look, like I said, now, if it's not against The Rock, there's another one, it's controversial figure, Brock Lesnar. I'm looking at the guys that have been around, that have multiple match rivalry history with Cena, right?
Yeah.
So let's take Brock back. Brock isn't obvious, right? But let's just use The Rock instead because he helped kick off all of this, right? With at Elimination Chamber.
Taking souls.
What was one of the things that that Cena said to Orton during their promos? I'm going to erase your family's legacy, right? Okay, so now you've got the Orton legacy. Let's take that off the table.
Yeah.
He beats Roman, however, that is the Anoa'i side of the bloodline. The Rock, the final boss, right?
You could even...
You're not going to erase my family legacy. Now, due to The Rock's Hollywood obligations, he beats Cena. But, right, I can't, fulfill the obligation, so I am going to vacate the championship, meaning at the Royal Rumble, the winner will not only punch their ticket to the main event of WrestleMania, they will punch their ticket as the new WWE Undisputed Champion. Only been a couple of times in history. Ric Flair won the Royal Rumble to win his first. Triple H did it, and then I think
that's it.
That was the last one.
Was there No, there wasn't a women's one.
No, not like that. But do you see what I mean? So then that puts extra emphasis on the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
Because now
that's who it's gonna fit.
The winner of the Rumble, and did this in Saudi, so now you've checked off a bucket list for them.
Yeah.
Right? The elimination, you put more emphasis on the chamber, because now it's the chamber's going to punch a ticket. Now, you see what I mean? So that's what I would do if I had the pencil.
Yeah.
All good, and all good. So
I think, and something to add there with the erasing the bloodline family legacy, you could even tell a great story going back to the Royal Rumble with a Cena versus Jay match, because Cena beats Roman, takes away the Anoa'i family. Then if he beats Jay for the Fatu legacy.
And then, and then after all of that, if you still want to try to do a Roman Rock, I still think, like you said, for the Ulafala, right? Because if you remember the image that they showed of the family tree on the at that presser, right? At the very top was High Chief Peter Maivia.
Yeah.
Then the Anoa'i side. So it's kind of like, I'm the top of this side.
Yeah.
You're the top of this side. Boom. But I agree with you. No championship. That's one of those stories.
Yeah.
So real quickly, Drake, here I want to give, because I would love to have you on again. I love talking with you. I work an immense amount of time, so I try to do them, if not once a week, every other week, catch up on the current events,
Yeah.
things of that nature. Here's what I want to do, kind of an assignment type. When you have time, parents permitting, right? And this is just a history of wrestling. And I know you can find the content, some of it on the WWE Network on Peacock, if you still have that. Go watch some of the Raven Tommy Dreamer matches, right? The history. Where and so this is long-term storytelling, right? That's the assignment. Raven Tommy Dreamer, Dusty Ric Flair, and Dudley's Hardys, right? Various matches, and don't watch. If you want to binge watch them, cool. But those three stories between those two tag teams and the other guys spanned decades, multiple, and it was go watch some of the beginning, the middle matches, maybe the last ones, right, and see the difference in the storytelling, but yet it's still fresh, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm kind of giving the assignment away, but you'll notice that it's not stale, that regardless who it is. So do that, and this is just a history appreciation of the history of wrestling, and plus then you can, might have something you want to ask Uncle Bully or Uncle Tommy, be like, hey, I was watching this and I just want to know, and they would love that too. Mm-hmm. But young man, I appreciate you. Always be kind. Yep. Respect your elders, respect your parents, do good in school, and you will go a long way in life, young man.
Thank you very much.
Real quickly, I want to let everybody know, hit the like, share, subscribe. This is Drake in LA. Where can they find you at on Twitter? Is it at?
So my mom runs it. I want to say it's like Michelle.
Yeah, let me pull it up right quick.
Mac 417, I want to say, is what it is. And then I have my own Instagram at Drake Los Angeles or Drake LA.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys, hey, anybody watching, you guys check him out on Instagram. I will post. I will share some links. It is at Michelle Mac. Hold up, I just had that up. That was crazy. It is Michelle Mac 41728, I believe. But in parentheses it says Drake from LA. So you'll know that if you have that on. Real quickly, before we get up out of here, Drake, hit him with the yeet one time.
4 letters, 1 word. Yeet!
Hold on. After I hit this, I want to keep you on just a second. I'm going to hit the end. It's going to play the outro video. Oh, yeah, maybe. Okay, hold on. There we go.